Welcome to the Listening Show, a show you can listen to here in the humble seat of a basement stair. Sits two friends who now are roommates. Hey, roommate. You just got home from work. What's it like working for a living?
I wouldn't know. It's hot and cold. It feels as if existence itself is...
It burns and it freezes.
Yeah. And I might be getting a promotion.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that jump in the conversation, but I'm glad because I was just going to mellow about, which I probably still will, but now I want to know about this promotion.
Yeah, basically I said I want a promotion again.
And they were like, hey, we have those.
Basically. I've asked for a lot of those. And every time it normally works. It just takes a little time usually. But what I said was we were having this team meeting, and basically I've been doing not an entry level position because I had to work a long time to get where I'm at, but I'm entry for that department. And I've been doing that for a while, and it's really repetitive, but I've been there long enough that I do everything else too. And so they were like, we're going to post another position, and that person's going to just do everything. The only problem is we don't know anyone specialized enough to do everything that we do and also willing to do the grunt work or whatever.
When did this happen?
This was last, a few days ago. I want to say Tuesday.
Oh, like
this
Tuesday? A couple days ago.
Yeah. Okay. So then I spoke up and I said, hey, so I know I'm in charge of like the imaging and all the documentation and stuff. And I've been doing that for 3 years, and that's totally a job that nobody wants to do for 3 years, but it's a great one to get your foot in the door, and it'd be a lot easier to post the imaging position than it would be a specialist position or whatever. Why don't you guys just post the imaging position for me, and then I can move over to something else? And everybody in there was like, oh, that's such a good idea. You do everything anyway. And everyone seemed, even my new boss was like really exuberant about the idea, because I actually solved like 3 problems with that suggestion because they didn't know what they were going to call the new position. They didn't know how much to pay.
I'm happy for you, but not just because I'm pessimistic, but because I've heard stories about your job. I'm just waiting till fast forward in a week and they go, yeah, so remember how we said it was a good idea? Well, we changed our minds. I'm totally expecting that to happen. I hope it doesn't, but that's where my mind goes.
I will say, to a large degree, my job has not given me cause to be pessimistic. There was a period where everything was bad and there was nothing good, but that is not the case anymore, as the person who made things bad is not there anymore.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, not I wouldn't have wished people lost their job, but since they did anyway, I'm also not going to cry about it.
I just mean the workplace situation is nice now.
Yeah. Anyway, I was very pleased that happened a couple days ago. And then yesterday when we were just doing, our offices are in the same area. So I saw everyone huddling together and talking. And then they called me and said, Zach, I need you to give me itemized summary of the duties that we're leaving out, because they're trying to build a case to ask for a new person. And so I gave him the itemized listing of the things that we're not doing and that we should be. And then I said, so what's this for? And she was like, for the imaging position, I'm going to request that and I'm going to promote you. And I was like, really? Is that for sure? And she's like, if we can get this new person approved, I'm promoting you, which is so it's up to the higher ups now. Nice. Yeah. Oh, not going through this.
Nah, that's okay. I could talk about something, but I want to interrupt. Is your story quite concluded?
It's done.
Well, if you're watching the show that you can listen at, you would see that we've moved it again. And no, don't have an again button. This is probably where we're going to be for a while. This is like a very fairly portable studio. It's a table, and we carry the table. So we have to carry up down the stairs each time out of storage, which will work because we have a nice little spot. I think you mentioned last time you mentioned I came as a roommate. Did you mention how your place is starting to fill up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
we're running out of room quickly with the quickliness. So anyhow, I think we're going to end up being here. But
and our other roommate moved in too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things happening.
I'm fine here. It's kind of humble, but also like I can't complain. We have I have a nice laptop, and we have a more than adequate. What would you call this? The Rodecaster Pro is
DAW.
A DAW.
Well, this is actually a
No, it's a
physical audio workstation, so it's not
I was
digital.
gonna say it's an. Well, I was gonna say something
Audio
workstation. DAW
workstation.
isn't that digital?
It is. That's why I would say it's a H. It's a
It's
HAW.
a FAW or
It's a
physical
hardware
HAW.
audio. Yeah, hardware audio workstation. Yeah.
I don't have it. I was
Oh.
gonna play that from Tom Hanks. Yeah.
Hey, here's something that we could talk about. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I would be interested in your perspective going from where you live to where you live now.
Would you actually? Or,
Yeah, I think the audience likes
Or are you
that
just saying
too.
it?
Because
Are you just saying it because you like me?
I like you, and I think the audience they don't know what it's like to be a rich YouTuber who's a spoiled asshole brat.
What do you know about it?
Yeah, nothing. So I thought it'd be an interesting
Okay.
to hear what it's like going from your house to here. I already kind of know, but
Sure. Okay.
something for you to rant
Well,
about. If you
I've
want.
lived in a house for about a year and a half. I joke because as it happens, not because I choose it necessarily, I tend to move every year and a half. So I've moved a lot. And I've had some cool places, but the place I was just at most recently was the biggest because it's a house. So it's 2-story, probably 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. Well, I don't think it counts the garage. It's big. It's awesome. More than I need, but awesome. Anyhow, I've had a fantasy about downsizing for a while, and the circumstances finally allowed to where, hey, I can justify moving now, doing downsizing now, living more responsibly / forcing myself physically to get closer to the listening show. If I move in with Zach, I kind of remove an obstacle of, I have to drive. It used to be driving an hour to get to the studio. Then it was you driving 20 minutes. I was already there. And now neither of us have to go anywhere. We're like forcing ourselves. Anyhow, circumstances allowed for me to finally fulfill the fantasy. And the fantasy is another topic I'll jump back to if you ask. But it's strange going from a house to a room. It's maybe 300 square feet, maybe. I'm going to say 250, but I've lived in rooms before, whatever. It's just a big jump. It's like a tenth of the space. And yet I'm like, I haven't even noticed or missed or cared that I'm not living in a house, which is just bizarre, I think. But I literally don't care. I always tell people, I feel like I move in or out when the pictures go up or down. When the picture's on the wall, I'm like, it's home. It's a very strange little arbitrary feeling, but it kind of applies to everything else. I have my bed and my Xbox and my laptop in my room. I'm good. Like there's a meme. I'm sure you've seen it. It's in some kind of apartment overlooking the beach. Doesn't really matter where it is, but it's an empty tan apartment with one collapsible chair in the middle of the room facing a TV on the floor. The caption is, girls hate that guys can live like this and be happy. Mm-hmm. Something like that. And it's like, yeah, we don't need much. Anyway, I went on with that a little bit longer than I had intended to, but that's about it.
Go back to what you said you could go back to if I asked about it, because I don't remember what it was.
I gave you a bookmark to go back to me fantasizing about downsizing.
Yeah.
There's two things to that. I'm kind of fascinated with small homes and mobile homes and things. I think they're cool. And on top of that, I know I can live with less because I've had less. I lived in half a bedroom underneath my bed, is what I tell people, because I had an elevated bunk. I had my desk underneath, and that was basically it. And that was enough. So anyhow, I know I don't need a lot, but the issue I had was, well, I have a lot, so why get rid of it? I should enjoy what I have, and I have enjoyed what I have. So I don't think I was wrong for doing that, but I was in the back of my mind, I could have less and be fine, but couldn't reconcile and go, I'll get rid of my stuff. So that was one half. The other half is that I don't know that this is true, but I tend to think that part of the reason for my success and happiness in the past was because I lived in a small space. Now, this is probably just correlation, not causation. But when I started my YouTube channel, I lived underneath the bed, and then I was a roommate, and then I got a place of my own, which was a 500 square foot studio apartment which was the biggest place I had lived in at the time. And oh my gosh, it was literally the happiest time of my life. That first, or that year, I guess, year and a half in that little studio. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, so I tend to believe, whether it's true or not, that my, I want to say work ethic, motivation, happiness comes from living in a small space that's efficient. Now, that's probably not true. Again, all I have is correlation. Like if you were to look at where I was living versus how I was doing, the small place, he's doing good. Well, maybe it has nothing to do with it. So again, tying back into number one, what if I'd be happier in a small place? But why would I move into a smaller place when I have so much? There's no reason to give this up. So now we're going to find out. The experiment's going to finally, probably, hopefully come full circle.
It's like the quote, drive comes from lack. There's a lot of phrases like that, but that's the one that first came to mind.
I totally understand it. I don't know that phrase, but I should have mentioned this if I didn't mention the last show. I think the issue with me not being as productive in a bigger space is because I'm too comfortable. I have everything I need. Why do anything? It's kind of that feeling. I don't know if that's true, but I tend to believe that. But I do believe I was too comfortable. But I don't know. Maybe that won't follow through. I'm in a bedroom now and I'm comfortable. So,
Well, that's. I'm glad that you're comfortable at least.
Yeah.
As the person whose house this was, like by myself, it feels good that you're cozy and that you don't feel all that different that you did when you had a nice big house that everybody liked. Like I like that house. Ideally, you get to keep cool, nice, big things, but. Things, whatever.
Yeah, it's weird with, I'm expanding a bit on the idea, things and money for me is just which is a good attitude sometimes, isn't a bad attitude other times. So that can be a bad attitude with money. I don't care about holding on to it and saving up. I'm not frugal. I probably should be. I'm like, whatever.
Can I bounce off of that?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's this, I remember my mom used to tell me, and I'm sure your parents said similar things or you've heard similar things, but they would say how you spend your money when you have none is the same way you'll spend it when you have some.
That sounds like something else.
What does it sound like to you?
Well, a fool and his money are soon parted, or however a poor man uses his money is exactly how he'll use it if he's rich. So if a poor guy just spends everything he has, if he owns a lot, he's just going to spend everything he has.
Yeah.
Whatever. It doesn't matter how much you have. The way you behave is the same. I don't know if that makes sense. Or
well, this was just an observation about you, but it was cool watching you when you got money. That you literally didn't change, and in good ways and bad ways. But I remember when we worked at Panera and stuff. Like, I don't know if it was your first or second paycheck, but you called me to your house and you were like, hey, come here. I got to show you something. And you were like, check this out. And you pulled out a samurai sword. I was like, how much was that? He was like $200. I don't remember how much it was, but it was, I think you said $200. I was like, that's like, Panera part-time, or whatever we were working. I was thinking, that's a lot of your paycheck. He's like, I know, it's cool though, right? And that's so funny that you would buy toys with your money back then. And then when you got some money, you get to put on Instagram your cool toys that you have now, like your Jeep. And it's toys. That's what you call it. I don't know. And that's what it is. It's like that's what you still buy with your money.
It's just stuff. I'm jumping backwards a bit. Yeah, that's funny. I don't remember that specifically, but I would not doubt that I'd do something like that. Hey, look at this.
Look what I bought. I spent my whole paycheck on this. You said something along those lines.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a lot of, Anyway.
It's just stuff. And I don't care. It doesn't matter. So you may as well enjoy it if you can. I don't know. And I'm not saying this is right. This is just generally how I think. Money is stuff. Stuff is stuff. May as well buy something and enjoy it. And if you don't have stuff or money, whatever. What good is money sitting around if you don't buy something with it? Which, again, isn't correct, but that's typically how I think of it. Like, it's just stuff. You may as well enjoy your stuff rather than letting money sit somewhere.
Yeah.
Generally, I'm like that.
I tend to think the same way. Let's do devil's advocate on that opinion of money and stuff. Let's pretend money has like moral value. I don't know, just for fun. Because like, for instance, you hear like the wise old people be like, if you save your money, then you can be a good steward and you can like help other people or whatever. And, I tend to understand that sentiment, and like, I get it, and it makes sense to me. But on the same end, it makes equal sense that money is just stuff, and stuff you either have things or you have money or you have none of those. And if you have one of those, then you have both. And if they're the same thing, and if the point of them is to enjoy it, then I don't see why not just spend it. I don't know though. There obviously is some merit to the idea that like, money should be saved and used like you're a steward of it.
I think like you, I see both sides.
Yeah. I just don't know how I'm supposed to practically apply that and still have
I'm
fun.
sure there's a very good middle ground.
Yeah.
I don't think I exercise it. I do know people who are very frugal, and I think it's commendable. I'm like, awesome, good for you. But I don't want to do that. And I also can't, I can't say you shouldn't do. I would never tell someone what to do. I don't think they're wrong for doing it personally. It's just not my style.
I'd take it a step further.
I don't know if I see as much as a right or wrong.
Yeah.
But sorry, what's your step further?
Well, like anything, I mean, I've seen people who are really good with money that I really admire because they save and they spend some and whatever. But I've also seen, the same as with people who spend a lot of their money early. If there's some people that I know that only save their money and they never spend it, and it's like, what good is that doing? You're not doing any good with that. You're just hoarding.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can appreciate it, right? Like,
no, so, I mean, I'm saying there's a point where you save too much. Like you said, there's probably a happy medium somewhere along the way. That quote that I say my dad used to say all the time, everything in moderation, including moderation. So it's like, well, I mean, it's like if you're moderately frugal, that's going to be a lot better than not frugal at all. But if you're too frugal, then you just never have.
so
I don't know.
there's this guy who somehow, after having a business, doesn't matter how, when he hit retirement, he had, at least $1 million. I don't know if it was millions, but he's just a humble guy, more or less. He had like $1 million saved. And he was happy with what he had, which is just a small house on the side of the street, like really small, really humble. So he just started giving it away to friends and neighbors and helping people out, which sounds badass. Like, that's awesome. I wish I could do that. And then in the context of this conversation, I was thinking, well, assuming that he saved it only because he was frugal, not because he didn't need to spend it, like judging by how he lived, he obviously could have spent it and lived more comfortably if that's what he wanted. Again, I'm put in the middle where I wish I could be him and be old and just give money away. But also, like, why didn't you just use it all these years? What a waste. Like, is it a waste, though, if you get to use it to do good, kind of like in the situation that you put forward earlier? It's like, what if money is moral points or something, and you can spend those to help people later? So I don't see a right or wrong. It's just two different ways of going about it.
Yeah.
But it's cool, though.
The right, it's probably on a whatever they call the diagram, the flow chart, or I think they call it a flow chart. But there's probably a peak in the center, like everything, where if you save some and you spend some, then it's probably you're in an optimal position. It obviously depends on the scenario too. Because like people like me, like let's talk about tithes, for example. So like the idea of a tithe is that you give a portion of your money to the church, and maybe in a more existential manner, you're giving it to a higher cause, if that makes sense. You're taking some of your hard earnings and you're sacrificing it to the ether. I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead.
But there's a reason for it, and I don't understand. Like it's contributing to the world, right? And I'm talking really generally. I don't know if I'm going anywhere in particular with this, but all that to point to, if I was trying to apply that principle in my life, I don't know what a higher cause really is, because I don't believe in churches right now. So like, I don't know, like if I was to give part of my money that I worked for, which I think most people would acknowledge that's a good thing to donate money or your time and things like that. But But if you don't know what is the most worthy cause or what is a worthy cause and what's just fluff, there's like just so much fluff with like charities and stuff. And you don't know how much of this money is actually going to the kids in Africa and how much of it is going to the people who fly the planes to go to see the kids in Africa and so they can have dinner. I don't know. It's not, that's a bad thing. It's just like a fine line between corporatizing things and actually making a difference.
I'll give my opinion on tithes if you want. So firstly, as a kid, I literally thought, I asked myself, we're giving this money to God? God needs money? How does he get the money? Who gives him the money? Who meets God?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Can I be the guy? Yeah.
No one can meet God. That's not allowed. So this is what happens as a kid. It's all in my head. It's like an empty, what's not cathedral? What's the main space in a church called?
The
freaking
auditorium.
Sure, whatever. Auditorium, dark. There's a spotlight in the center on a pedestal with a bowl, and one usher's allowed in, and he puts it on there, and he has to leave the door closes, and then the money ascends out of the bowl and it goes up. That's why I thought it happened. I was like, but God doesn't need money, but I guess He wants us to give.
Yeah.
Like. It's like the sacrifice in the Bible. Like, He doesn't need you to kill a bull. It's what it means, not what it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so here's my money.
That's awesome.
Like, I want to sneak in that room though and watch it float.
Yeah.
But then God would get mad. Anyway, that was a big
But
detour.
God will get mad.
Yeah.
I've totally had thoughts
Open the
like
door.
that.
It's going up. Open the door.
Yeah, the money goes back down and like looks at you.
Stupid.
I like the idea of the money hitting the ground and looking at you like, you're not allowed to see this.
Anyway, so I believe it was the Bible that says if everyone in the church tithed, the church would never be in need. And a tithe generally, I don't know where this comes from. I think it's the Bible, is 10% of what you make, which as a kid, I was like, that's a good amount, but not a lot. As an adult, it's more like, whoa, that's a lot. Anyway,
Right.
but then I thought, if everyone in the church did give a tenth, yeah, the church is probably going to be absolutely fine. That's a lot of money. 10% between 1,000 people is like 100 per, whatever. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot.
Anyhow, so if tithing, if the purpose of it is to fund the church, then yeah, that makes sense. If your community is immediate and it's just that building essentially, yeah, tithing would be a totally adequate system. Now, as far as the moral part of it, yeah, if you think about tithing as a charity, then it gets more to, well, then where do I give my money to if I want to help people? Why would I give it to a charity when I don't know how the money is being spent? You could say the same thing about your church, is I don't know how they're spending it. You may say, I like my church, but I would rather give money to this specific cause. Okay. So I think my thoughts about it stopped there.
I don't think the whole tithing to a church too, like how much, like so many churches these days, this is why I have a problem with it. Or I use the word corporatized. I think I'll stick with it. It's just like you walk in and there's graphic designers who like make like all these logos and stuff and everything's pretty and handsome. And then there's like all the nice new furniture and the floors look great. And it's like, this all was just like people's sacrifice so that they could make a church like secure and they could help. And it's all just going to bolster this building.
I got a couple things to say.
It's you can get, there's several problems that you could have with it if you want it to go to a good cause.
Your immediate problem is you walk in, you say, if I'm giving money to this church, well, clearly some of it's going to the stuff that they do not need.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I could
Matching
be giving all my money
t-shirts.
to, like, for a fact, I know that my money is going toward the church's coffee shop and not just kids or something. And that can be,
don't get me
aggravating,
wrong. I mean,
off-putting.
to a certain extent, that's all good.
Right.
But
it's hard to, whatever.
it's hard to differentiate when it's just grandiose and you're puffing yourself up and selling brand instead of God.
So I'm going to jump
Which
to
is
the
your
other,
job.
the other thing, which is what you were talking about, the corporatism of churches. I don't know if that's the word I used, but it's a good word. We were just before years ago discussing our, what's the word? Problems with I might say commercialism, commercial behavior of churches. I don't know what the right word is. Corporatism is a good word, but it's more than that. Corporatism is, I don't know. Maybe we'll land on it. It's not important. So when I walked into a church for the first time that had a bookstore and a coffee shop and a lounge and not a gift shop, but like stuff to sell, I was like, what is going on? At first, I was like, this is legit what God or Jesus did when he walked into the temple and they were selling stuff. When they were flipped tables, like GTFO. I was like, this can't be a real church. This can't be happening. Now, maybe I'm just being, what's the word? The opposite of sacrilegious. Religiously radical. What's the word? Maybe I'm being too,
like judgmental,
maybe I'm being too harsh. But that was my first thought. And to a degree, I still hold that that's unnecessary and doesn't belong in a church. Now, then you could argue me down and say, well, no, what should a church be? And I go, well, maybe in my naive mind, it's literally just, what do we call that again? The cathedral? The auditorium? It's just a stage and pews. And maybe a small room in the back with nothing in it where people can meet in and out. That's it. That's what a church is to me.
Really?
Well, yeah, but again, maybe I'm being naive. And like you were saying, there is a place and a use for, well, expanding on what you were talking about, there is a use for a coffee shop. You can, God can work anywhere. He can work in a coffee shop that you build. You can invite a friend to church, invite him to coffee at your church, and he could meet God that way. Okay. So we can argue back and forth about what money needs to be spent to spread the kingdom.
Yeah.
But for me, a coffee shop and a church is too far. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that.
It's a nice luxury. I totally, like, if I was in charge of a church, if I could have a coffee shop because we just have so much money, that's awesome. I don't know. I guess we'd have to define church a little better because I think it's easy to, well, I get the sense, well, what you said about churches, the pews and an auditorium and a pastor stands up and there's a worship service. And I think that's what everybody thinks when they think church. But I think if you stripped it down to its bare bones of what is the intent of church, you'd come to a very different answer than auditorium with chairs and a pastor.
Sure.
I think like I heard stories about how my parents witnessed and did church overseas when they went to Nepal and India and stuff, for example, and it's so different. You know, maybe it's because it's largely underground and it has to be because of the oppression of the Christians there, but there was something so like raw and real and not at all like this uniform structure that church is here. And it's like people took church and they milked the nutrients out of it and they left this like stale, crunchy starch. And it's you can eat it. And sometimes you can flavor it with coffee shops and matching T-shirts and graphic designers, and it'll taste like synthetic food. It'll be like, wow, this is food. This is church food. You know, it's church. But then you actually like look at a raw, thick cooked meat, and you eat that, and it's like, oh, this is what this was supposed to be, and it's not close.
I don't get your analogy, but maybe this is the same. If church is meat, and church today is a big burger with lots of condiments and things on it that kind of dilute the meat, and you forget that the burger, the point of it was the patty, but it started with. Anyway, does that make sense? That's the fluff.
Yeah, kind of.
You can kind of taste church in a burger, but
it feels like
one
church.
day you go, oh, this is real meat.
Yeah, that's exactly my. Okay. That's a good. Like churches in America at least are like McDonald's cheeseburgers, and then you go eat a steak. Like that's the juxtaposition, like from my understanding. Like here's another example. This is all personal, like experience stuff. But I've felt more in touch with like Christians in a community, in a small group of people than I ever did in a church building.
Sure.
Like when like I'm sure I've had conversations with you where it just felt intimate and it felt like God was there. Or, you know, like with a small group of people or when we were singing worship songs or something. And I was like, this is way better than sitting down and having someone tell me, you know, part 3 of a lesson plan about a story I've read in the Bible 1,000 times, just trying to milk tiny nuggets of something applicable out of it.
If I'm not interrupting, I'm
go ahead.
mentioning because I'm going to forget them. So what I think church is because you mentioned the oppression of Christians in those countries your parents were at. And I was thinking about the pilgrims before they left to America. They had to meet in secret in barns usually and underground. Now, that was obviously church. And the church is the body of Christ, I think. And the body of Christ is the members of the church, the people. The people are the church, essentially. So when they get together to worship God, that's church. You could have church outside in the field with nothing there but people. That's church. I'll allow it. Now say go to church. Maybe a bit of a stretch, but sure. I'll call it church. Anyhow, so the second thing was you said it felt more real or honest, might be the right word. Authentic when you have a smaller group of people, which I think everybody can understand that idea. And that kind of connects to my thinking about downsizing and being being too comfortable.
Nice tie-in.
So, yes, I obviously agree that when you're in a smaller group of people, like I'm thinking about the kids groups we were at with, and we to go do missions or not, backyard Bible club and do things
I
like
remember
that. So that's a good experience, which felt way more genuine than the large corporate church, which we can go back to if you want. But when you can get too big, you can get too comfortable, I think. I don't know what or where that is, but for me, when it comes to churches, if I see a coffee shop in the church, I'm like, this is too comfortable.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. That's just my personal opinion.
I want to give, just because I like looking at everything from whatever side, I want to give not the argument, but the justification for the corporate church that I've heard. My ex, she was very into the corporate church. She went to like a chain that they had many branches and
A chain, literally McDonald's of churches.
that is not an exaggeration.
No,
it was one of those.
I totally agree.
And like the pastor, they would gather in this building that was a very nice, rich building.
Oh my gosh!
The
at
music,
church, they have Happy Meals.
basically.
No, they do. They give out kids little coloring books and things to do during service. And they have a play place at church too. Yeah, they do outside. They have a play set. Wow. Anyway, continue.
Like the pastor showed up on a video screen and the music was produced to hell and back and it was too loud.
Grief, dude.
You know, stuff like, and I sat there. I was very not pleased to be there, and she knew that. I felt like it was like I understood it, and I understood why people liked it. It was entertaining for sure. So when I had this long talk with her later, and it didn't really get to an argument. She was really good at listening about what I felt about it, and because I'd explained I don't like churches, and this is the reason basically. And she said something that stuck with me, and it still sticks with me because she said, well, the way that our church sees it is we don't see the church as this building that we go to on Sundays. We use the goal of this building to pull people in and entertain them and get them interested. And then the small groups are where real church is. And I was like, okay, I can see that. I think there's some utility to that idea where you have to appeal to, you know, the people who don't know anything about church and they just want to be entertained. And they're like, hey, I wonder this will be fun for a day. And they go in there and then they realize, wow, this is really quality stuff. And they've got a coffee shop and it's, you know, like that, like people in America would. You see quality and you're like, I'm attracted.
That. I'm thinking about people with short attention spans who are constantly bombarded with entertainment. How do you compete with that as an industry? Remember, that's the right word. Is McDonald's an industry? Because whatever McDonald's is the word I want to equate
franchise.
To churches. I don't know, because you said corporatism and there's a corporate for McDonald's, but I'm thinking about commercial like products and factories. That's what I'm thinking about. Mass production. So I don't know what the word for that is, but
I think it's a franchise. Like where you can pop up a new like you have this franchise and you just buy into it different places until there's hundreds of these that all buy into it.
Maybe. I just don't. Well, I'm getting caught in terms. It's not very important.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, I understand there is a conversation to be had. There's a reason for needing to be so large and grandiose as a franchise. You got to make sure you have good products to sell, otherwise you're not going to get new customers. I get that. I get it. But my question again is how much? And I'm not one to say. It's like the coffee shop I think is too far, but I know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
I know why you have high production videos in your church and merchandise, and it's just, but you know, I can't help but feel the strong sense of heathenism. Is that the right word?
I get it. It just feels like it tarnishes a good thing. But I can't really, with that opinion, I can't reconcile the utility that she was telling me when she explained it that way. I was like, hey, you're totally right. If for the person who has no care of what Jesus is or any of the Christian stuff, Like they just wouldn't care about small group and stuff like that. They would just think that this is, I don't feel the emotional tie to these people. This isn't entertaining. It becomes entertaining when you know the people and it's like, it's intimate and all that. But
yeah,
but no, I don't know.
I want to go on a bit of a rant about church and entertainment, and
I've got one point that I'll say before I move off of that, and it is that one argument against that idea is, well, if you build it, they will come, and if it's quality, then they'll recognize that, and then they'll stay. It's not really your job to erect the light in the sky. You're supposed to go out and get people. Like you're supposed to go out. That's your job.
You're supposed to be the light in the world,
not build the light,
not build a Babel.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So that would be the argument against the franchise. I think that's probably ultimately why I don't like it.
Again, we both know why they do it, but we just don't think it's the right.
It's lazy.
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
Lazy is
self-aggrandizing.
Lazy is a good word.
I'd love to hear.
Maybe a bit selfish is the right word.
Yeah, maybe if someone has a dissenting opinion, they can justify like why that's a good thing. I really would love to hear that because I'm having a hard time with churches in general because of that very thing. And I'd like to not have a hard time with churches. I'd like to go back sometime soon.
I'll skip the entertainment part and go to the one example of franchise, whatever that annoys me the most about church. So coffee shops, as an example, were one sign of just a strong, what's the word? Disconnection? Is that the one? I hate getting stuck up on words, but they're important to me. Anyway, Another example of something that a church did was every service, every week, as part of their program, because they're an entertainment industry, basically. I think the church focuses too much on entertainment and quotas, like a franchise, and it bugs me. So the entertainment part, we talked about the quota part. So, and then what's the word? Advertising, but like more than advertising.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I think you know. So part of the service is the pastor calls out into the auditorium of hundreds of people and says, if someone wants to be saved, come up here on stage. And this is a program. It happens every week, like a show. Mm-hmm. And then they get people to come up, and then they applaud these people for showing up. So we're essentially giving them treats or treating them like dogs, positive reinforcement. Because you walked up on here, you're going to be saved, and that's all it takes. And this is so easy. And then they have them in a line. They hand them each a Bible. They turn them all to the right. These people that volunteered, and they all walk off stage through one door. I'm like, that's like an assembly line. Mm-hmm. There was nothing genuine in there at all. This is just heartless
Christian
mass
factory.
production. That's how I feel about it. I know I'm especially cynical about stuff, but I see that and just go, that's awful. Those people, do you think God did that? No, the church freaking put on a show for these people. Everybody in the auditorium praise themselves and try to sell a product, the product of God that they're making and selling. It just pisses me off.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
I think I know why I have a problem with that. Maybe this is what you're trying to say, but like, I think another example of things that we wouldn't like is like when the pastor goes, we did this outreach at such and such place, and 4 people were saved, and everyone claps. And it's like, I can't help but sit there and think, do you think God applauds himself on 4 people saved? I don't think he thinks of it like, nice, this week I got 4 more. I think it's such a profound individual experience that God doesn't look at the overall count. He just looks at this person's heart is this way, and I can see that it's so individual.
I get it. It's that same. It's I don't know what the words are, so I'm just going to spout. It's the church patting itself in the back and praising itself as
first having sold the product.
Here's our sales figures.
Yeah.
If your product is this new medical gel that cures all wounds if you apply it, they could care less about how and if the gel is used. They just care about selling it and telling their investors, look how much we sold.
Yeah.
They're all about themselves. I don't see a love for the people that they're supposedly. Yeah.
Well, look what we did this week. Our sales numbers are off the charts.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right.
But I think it's an interesting way you put it, though. You think God goes, yeah, 4 more. He doesn't. He doesn't look at numbers. He's got bigger designs.
I'm sure he knows it all.
Oh yeah,
but it's like it's for
him.
him.
What point is that? That's like going to war, and
it's treating.
This is a bad analogy. Going to war, you got to fight, and we had 4 casualties. Like, so low. That's an inverse.
It's reducing God to a hungry hippo who just needs more Christians so he can just bring them in. He's out here now. I'm more people. Bring me more balls. I don't know. It just is so. It's not personal at all.
I was gonna say it's impersonal. It's was it disingenuous?
Here's the things that I think a church has the right to praise themselves over, if they have any right at all. Having worked with a person through depression for a decade or whatever, and they haven't conquered it, but they've been with them the whole time. That's something worth working. That's something worth worshiping or worth praising. Or saving a marriage that's all but over for all intents and purposes. I don't know. The things that actually nobody would bring up in a church that are like the point of a church, I don't know.
I jump back a bit about how big churches don't work because they're too impersonal. I think it's because church is a body of people, which is a community. Mm-hmm. If you get too big, a standing crowd of 1 million people, as an example, you don't know anybody. You can only know so many names. And an effective church is one that's small enough to where everybody knows everybody.
Maybe.
Ideally, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what we're talking about. If you had a group of friends, forget that analogy. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'm trying to reconcile the utility of a 100 people to 500 people church, because there's got to be some.
Oh yeah,
there's some. I mean, it's a large community. Maybe you talk to strangers every day, and maybe that's the point. Is you get a generally more topical conversation. Doesn't get very. It generally stays kind of superficial, but it's Godward aimed. Maybe that's the utility, to see casual godliness in action. I don't know, but that's the two words together that kind of self-conflictory, like casual godliness. That's not really a thing that is done casually. Maybe that's.
I was going to ask you. Yeah. So you're going to make a church. How are you going to make it? And I thought, well, I went down this line in my head. If it got too big, how do you solve it? And I realized, I had a church. I was part of a church that did this. As it got to a certain number, big enough, it split into another church. And I were being like, why would you do that? Why would you separate everybody? And I think my dad tries to, because that way they can reach more people. I don't know if that's what he said or what he said, but basically, if it gets too big, nobody knows anybody and you can't be a community anymore. So you can make a new community somewhere else if you go from 500 to 1,000, make 2 500 person churches, and now you can have 2 communities. And what that church does is they have 4 or 5 campuses now. They started with 3 like 10 years ago. And they all are in contact with one another. And I think they follow the same program, much like you would in a super large church with hundreds of people, but they are just their own little, it's kind of like the small group idea with churches. I like that approach. At least I understand it. So I don't know what the solution is, but that is a solution to the problem of maybe becoming too corporate. I don't know. So it's almost like a franchise within a franchise, though.
Yeah, I think more or less you just described the same thing. But I do get it. I mean, you could look at the patterns of nature for helpful hints on how to grow a thing, and if a thing gets too big, it sheds off the extra, or it separates entirely. You look at cellular regeneration, and once a cell gets too big, it just splits into another cell, and they just become independent living things that are their own thing. So, and obviously, if that happens in nature, it's a repeatable pattern. At least it's healthy generally. There was some. I complain about church a lot to the people when I get to talking about, especially people like my mom or dad, and my Christian friends, if they ever ask me, are you doing, how's your walk with God? That's the question, right? And usually generally I say something along the lines of, hey, it could be way better. And, I'd say bad, except for I don't ignore him per se. All that to say, who knows what that means? I could get on that. But one of the criticisms I get when I talk about church and I complain about it is, it's your responsibility to fix it. If you have all these problems with it, you see it, and maybe you see it accurately, maybe you don't, and you got to figure that out first. But if you have a problem with something and you can substantiate it, then it becomes your duty to fix it. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'll just do that. And it's that's where I get sort of hung up on it. To some degree, I've thought about this casually before quickly rejecting the idea because it is too overwhelming at the time. But start my own church. That thought has not been lost on me. What would that look like? Would that just look like invite my friends over and talk about God some? It's not like I'm in a place of authority, but maybe that's what people need.
Is you? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I would never do that, but that's because I tend to not like the idea of responsibility ever, which could be a topic for another day.
Certainly.
Speaking of which, another day we'll probably have to come because it's time for me to eat chicken. If that's okay with you.
That's okay. I like talking about this. We can call this episode church. Even though we started on something else.
Yeah, sure, whatever. I wish I could have joined.
We'll talk. Let's try to remember to talk about responsibility next time.
Yeah, I'll remember.
You'll remember?
I don't know if we'll follow through with it, but I'll remember.
Because that's important, and we're both wrong. That spoiler. You don't even have to listen to the next episode.
All right, I forgot what I was going to say. I guess it wasn't very important. Thank you guys for listening. We will be listened to by you next time.
I haven't said any bad words, I don't think, this episode. So butthole and anus juice.